Hey, good afternoon, Customer Success Summit. How are we doing? All right, how has the last 2 days been? Oh, come on. How has the last 2 days been? All right, all right. I love these conferences. It gives you an opportunity to reconnect with old friends and make new ones. And when I come to conferences, I always try and take away two things. What is one thing that I could implement today in my customer success organization? And then what is something I can think about in the next 6 to 12 months that's a little bit of a longer term project? And if you've not gotten that already, I can guarantee you I will give you some food for thought to take a few things away. In full disclosure, some of the things I will say will absolutely make you think hard, maybe a little bit controversial inside your organization, and we certainly think that that's a really good thing. All right, so a little bit about TSIA, the Technology Services Industry Association. Who are we? We are a research institution that is grounded in data. We leverage an enormous community of traditional technology companies, hardware, software companies, as well as non-traditional companies, healthcare companies, industrial equipment manufacturers, et cetera, over 8 research disciplines. And I have the opportunity to lead the customer success discipline. So I have the coolest job in the world because I get to talk to all of you and your peers every single day, CCOs, vice presidents of customer success, and other key leaders inside of companies like CEOs and CFOs. So all of our insights are grounded in that relationship, that community, and that data. So today I'm going to share with you 3 topics. I'm going to talk about the metrics that matter, analytics, and talking about owning a number. The whole idea here is how can you walk away and accelerate your success? How can you have an impact on your company today and in the future? And what are some bets that you need to be making in the future? So let's start out and let's talk about the metrics that matter. And when we talk about the metrics that matter, what I'm really talking about is about the sustainability of your customer success organization. And our framing on this is customer success as a service capability with a sales result. One of the more fascinating areas of research that we do is looking at customer success organizations that don't sustain themselves, the ones that actually fail. And what it comes back to is some of these financial and these fiscal metrics that they haven't planned out and they haven't figured out how to scale over time. And when we think about the ROI and some of the financial metrics of customer success, we break it into 3 buckets. We talk about efficient sales costs, we talk about monetized customer success, and really core fiscal metrics. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the last 2 here. So on fiscal metrics, we certainly think that there's 3 metrics that you absolutely have to measure: retention rate, churn rate, and expansion rate. And anybody who has read any customer success blog, if you've been inside of customer success for less than a year, if you've been inside of customer success for 5 years or longer, you've heard about these metrics. However, if you want a really fun exercise, on the way as you exit the conference, ask your neighbor how they calculate these. I can almost guarantee you that you calculate them different. The reason I say that is because that study has actually already been done. Every company has their own unique language around expansion rates, retention rates, and this bit of research was actually done by KeyBank through Pacific Crest. And the important thing here is when you think about benchmarking these and you think about all of these important financial metrics, make sure that you're doing the apples to apples comparison, and that's what we do when we look at these financial metrics. One other thing that you need to think about is about measuring the impact, but measure the impact of the individual CSM group and the customer success group on both your fiscal metrics and your voice of the customer metrics. One thing as we see customer success organizations taking shape inside of companies, you're not going to be able to manage the entire base of customers. So you usually start out with a pilot program, and you're usually covering a limited set of customers. But make sure that you're managing the with and the without, apples to apples, enterprise, SMB, whatever segment of the market. We've actually, through our own data, established that there's a 10% percentage points difference between retention rates of with and without CSM. So meaning if you took an enterprise group of customers and you cover them off with a group of CSMs versus those that are not covered off with CSMs, you're actually going to see a 10 percentage point improvement. Make sure that you're measuring that impact inside of your company. Monetizing customer success. We believe that monetizing customer success both diversifies the revenue stream and it creates sustainable funding. You may have listened to a breakout session by my colleague, John Shaw, who talked about monetizing customer success. We believe that this is an important step when it comes to establishing your metrics and measurements. We've seen this number about how many customer success organizations are monetizing customer success fluctuate between about 36% and almost half over the last 2 years. But we think that this is a very important play in the marketplace, and we think it could create a sustainable funding model for you and your customer success organizations. Now, one thing I will tell you about monetizing customer success is you may not get it right the first time. Think of it like you're roller skating or you're on ice skates. You may be a little bit wobbly and you may fall down, but over time you're going to iterate and you're going to be going super fast. And the best example in the marketplace is one of the longest standing examples, which is Salesforce. They have a Premier and a Premier Plus offering that includes CSM capability, and they've done a lot of investment to automate some of their accelerator program. And what we see distinguished within the Salesforce portfolio as well as other monetized portfolios is this gap, and I call this gap taxi cab consulting that customer success organizations are filling through their monetized portfolios. And this taxi cab consulting sits between what I frame up in the research between Snapchat and War and Peace. And what I mean by that is if you think about some of your traditional service engagements at your company, think of a support engagement as a very quick engagement. If you've ever been in support, ideally they're self-serving or you're not engaging at all, or maybe that's a very short engagement of a 1-minute lookup inside of an online knowledge management portal. If you think of your traditional professional services engagement, some of those, especially in technology like ERP, can be months, if not even longer. What's winning the day in these monetized customer success portfolios really sits between that. It's these highly impactful, accelerated portfolios that are 2, 4, 8 hours sometimes that sit between your traditional support engagement and your traditional professional services engagement. And again, we frame that up as taxi cab consulting. Other metrics like voice of the customer are absolutely important. And one thing that has changed over time is we've seen this shift from traditional marketing organizations to customer success and services around owning voice of the customer programs. About 10 years ago, almost all of the time we saw marketing organizations own these. And now it is the domain of these customer success organizations. And we encourage you to own that inside of your company. And this is going to look at both transactional as well as relationship surveys. And certainly the most common voice of the customer metric is going to be NPS, as we see on the relationship side. And on the transaction side, certainly we see CSAT, we see customer effort, as well as in some cases using NPS as well. But taking voice of the customer to the next level, we encourage all of you to be that voice of the customer and create a customer-centric organization. Now, some of you may have that start at the top. It may start from your CEO where she or he is messaging that down inside of your organization, and we think that that's great. And here's a quote just to show you from Jeff Bezos around Amazon, around how important that customer-centric culture is. But if not, if you don't have that leadership function, you represent the voice of the customer, and you've got to bring that forward inside of your company and help create that culture. All right, let's talk about analytics. One question that I always get as a researcher, I'm a former practitioner like all of you. I did customer success for 10 years, and before that I was in other service disciplines like managed services and support and professional services. But one of the questions I always get is, Phil, what's your biggest regret as a customer success leader, as a former vice president of customer success? What would you do differently? This is it. I would make a big bet on analytics. And certainly, you've heard this week about buzzwords and technology that's on the cusp, like machine learning and artificial intelligence and data analytics. I'm sure you had to attend a breakout session. The challenge that we see in the data is we talk a good game, but we're not good at it. Only 25% of customer success organizations actually use data analytics to help predict renewal opportunities. We think that that has got to improve over time. Further, 13% use data analytics to help predict expansion opportunities. We're going to talk a little bit more about prescriptive motion and leveraging that data to be able to help predict retention and expansion are core tenets of a customer success organization. Now, what are you doing in lieu of data? Well, you go back to the very beginning of your customer success organization. And I know from personal experience, as well as talking to many of you, in the beginning, what did you have? You had heroes, right? You had customer success managers that were executing against heroic acts. And while we think that that's great, and certainly it's fantastic to recognize that experience that they generate for the customer and to make sure that they're able to save a customer through a red save opportunity or whatever it may be, I can tell you that the heroic act is not sustainable and frankly exhausting. So when we look at this, we say, how can we become more prescriptive? And in the beginning, what we see is these heroic acts, but then when customer success organizations start adding some playbooks and some success plans, they're really doing the basics. And what I mean by the basics is you may have a playbook for a QBR. You may even have a playbook for running a survey like a Net Promoter Score and what to do for a promoter or a detractor. But do you really have advanced playbooks? Have you mapped out the customer journey and then actually created playbooks that align to the customer journey? More than likely, the answer is no. We see about 13% to 23% of customer success organizations, this number is the highest it's been since we've been studying this, that actually are mapping out and creating playbooks that align to the customer journey. And when I talk about the customer journey, I'm really talking about what is the customer trying to achieve with your technology. It's not your goal of retention and expansion, it's their goal. It's their business outcome. Whether that's lowering costs, creating revenue opportunities for them, or if it's a vertical opportunity, like if your customers are in the healthcare space, what do they care about? They care about improving patient care, they care about reducing nurse turnover, they care about their specific vertical goals. So what you've got to do is create prescriptive motions. Time, event, and value-based interactions are what is going to win the day. And then that gives you the right to ask to continue their business with you and to grow with you. And we call that retention and expansion. We'll give you a framework that we leverage with our own member community, our success plan and playbook framework. So if we think about this, we start with the business outcome. What are the business objectives that my customer is trying to achieve? What are the financial results that they would achieve if they actually achieve the business outcome? What are the KPIs and metrics that the customer and I should be tracking? What are the practices and capabilities that are needed for my customer to achieve their business outcome? And who are the people inside of the company that have the responsibility for the outcome? If you notice, those first 5 have nothing to do with you. It's all centered on the customer. It's only in the last element, technology, that you then align the complete stack upwards. How's your technology help the people develop the practices, track the KPIs, achieve the results, and deliver against those business outcomes? We'll give you more tools to help quantify business outcomes using effective technology adoption. Oftentimes when we hear companies talk about adoption, they stop at the lowest level of adoption that we call consumption. Consumption is not adoption. Consumption is the basic level that you're able to achieve, which is going to be usage of the tool, how frequently they're logging in or accessing the technology. But what you want to get to is effective technology adoption. Effective technology adoption is when the customer is actually achieving their outcome with your technology. Additionally, validating using third-party validation. This is an example with IBM using the Ponemon Institution, creating a framework to show the cost of a data breach. And then finally, comparing, using customer benchmarking. Zendesk is one of the best examples in the marketplace with a support technology that they give you real-time framing on how you're doing as a support organization if you use Zendesk. So as we think about this, quantify, validate, and compare along the journey. Certainly items that will help you along the way. And it comes back to the promise of your technology. There's several smart people inside of your company. You've got your product managers that are defining the promise. You've got product development that are building the promise. You've got sales teams that sell your promise, but it's up to you to deliver against the promise. You are the customer success organization, and you've got to bring it home for the customer. Now, ideally, when it comes to analytics and you've created the playbooks and you're starting to create these time, event, and value-based prescriptive motions, you could probably use some technology. I'm hoping that this week, you may have heard a little bit about a technology platform being at this conference. Well, our data shows that between 60 and 70%, right now it's 2/3, don't use a technology platform. There's certainly a lot of investment in the technology platforms that are available today, and I think some of the announcements this week were fantastic to see that are going to allow you to scale. Finally, let's talk about owning a number. One of the more controversial items in customer success. Who owns the revenue? Should I own the revenue? Is it sales? We think that owning a number will create a scalable funding model and streamline sales and marketing costs. When we look at the public data, some of the challenges with sales and marketing costs for subscription companies don't scale well. If you compare traditional cloud companies or companies that are heavily in subscription to legacy technology companies, companies that have sold either a software model or a hardware model, the sales and marketing costs are somewhere between 10 and 15 percentage points difference. We think that you can play a significant role in streamlining and creating a more efficient sales model. So it's all about cost-effective account expansion. And the ultimate question when I get a chance to talk to CFOs inside of companies is this red pill, blue pill conversation. Do I add a sales rep? Do I add a CSM? Well, we think that there's an opportunity for CS to actually own the revenue number. And it could be any number to start out with. We already talked about monetizing customer success, certainly owning the retention number, owning some level of lead generation or expansion number. There's significant opportunities. But right now in the public data, we see a massive opportunity to streamline sales and marketing costs. And in the data, when we look at renewal responsibility, who's actually doing it today, the thing that scares us a little bit is that still there's more than 1/3 of account executives or sales reps, about 36% today, own the renewal number. And we can go through this analysis, and I talk to a lot of sales executives, should they own the renewal number? But if it's a significant part of the sales rep's quota, let's say it's 25 or 30% of their annual quota, you have to ask yourself the hard question. You have to ask yourself, could a sales rep use that 25 or 30% of their time to do the really difficult job of hunting and acquiring new customers? And that's a very important question to ask. And using that data analysis, should you streamline sales and marketing costs using a customer success organization, we certainly think that there's a big opportunity there. The other opportunity is moving from defense to offense. We see a lot of customer success organizations start out with charters of adoption and retention, and that's perfectly okay. But there's a massive amount of opportunity for you to take the lead inside your company to be the cost-effective lead generation part of your company. My colleague Steve Frost did this fantastic research looking at cost-effective lead generation. And if you talk to your CMO, your chief marketing officer, she or he will tell you an outbound lead is upwards of somewhere of $200 to $250 per lead. If you look at customer success and services touch points, they're less than $50 per lead. And not only are they cheap, but they are some of the most highly qualified leads that you will find in your company. Cost-effective lead generation, cost-effective expansion, these are themes that you're going to see in customer success. The end game here is about delivering the right touch point at the right time inside of your customer's journey at the most cost-effective way that you can do that. And certainly customer success has the ability to do that. We also believe that it's the process that owns the customer. There gets to be this holy debate between sales, customer success, maybe even marketing or some other parts of your organization. Who owns the customer? It's the process, right? It's not the sales rep, it's the process. Make sure that you're mapping out the customer's journey, making sure that you're aligning the right touch points at the right timing inside the customer journey, but do it at the most cost-effective way that you could think about it. And we're pretty passionate about this revenue number, and we've actually created a new metric inside the industry called the Customer Success Power Index, or CSPI. One of the things that our members do is they benchmark with us, so we get to know a lot of data about them so that we can help guide them through their journey as a customer success organization. So we've taken the steps to now add revenue as an important part of that, to not only look at how effective that you are at your customer success practice, but how impactful are you to the bottom line of your company. There was an analyst last week that said in the United States, there's a 70% chance of a recession in the next 5 years. Things are pretty good right now. But having revenue as an important part of the equation and owning some of that and making your organization a very cost-effective sales capability is something that we see is going to be very important to customer success over time. We'll also give you some more help. After the award ceremony and the closing remarks, I think at one of the back tables there, you'll be able to have access to our most recent playbook. It's actually called the Technology as a Service Playbook. It's a resource guide that we wrote. Our executive director, Thomas Law, and our CEO, J.B. Wood, published this just recently. We've written several books in a series, starting from Complexity Avalanche, B4B, Consumption Economics, and this is the Technology as a Service Playbook. I encourage you not only to take it home, but take 2 or 3 copies. Give one to your CFO, give one to your head of sales, head of strategy. There's a great page, page 16, that'll actually give you insight into which chapters that allow you to read. It's great for cloud companies that want to become profitable if you're not profitable today, and it's great for technology companies that are making the pivot from a legacy license or a legacy technology to more of a subscription economy. I'll leave you with 3 closing thoughts, which was part of this presentation. Measure the metrics that matter, make a big bet on data analytics, and own a number. We think that these are 3 key plays for you and your customer success organizations to take forward into this year. With that, I wish you well. I hope 2018 is your year inside of customer success. I wish you safe travels.